Greetings to everyone who is listening. My name is Amisha, and I'm going to talk about the interplay between education and the economy. But before that, I would like to thank the FAIR team for all the wonderful matter sessions that they arranged for us over the past couple of months. All engagements on the platform provided to me and my fellow changemakers have been truly refreshing, and there could not have been a better way to spend that time. Now, getting back to the matter at hand. The topic of education has always been very close to me. I think my interest in the field of education originates from the fact that my mother is a teacher, because of which I have seen the functioning of educational institutions very closely. My connect with the field further strengthened when I moved to Delhi for college and started volunteering to teach underprivileged children at a school near my housing accommodation. Through my experience, I was privy to two very different realities of education in India. Where I studied, I was no stranger to indulgent upbringings. Seated in a classroom lined with expensive bags, my peers and I would often discuss the suffrage caused to us by the oh so dogmatic education system of India. A stark contrast to the central university I am now studying in. It is where students take to the streets so that that very dogmatic education system can cover a greater expanse. A contrast still to the students in the NGO run school near my housing accommodation. Within it, little boys and girls struggle to fulfill their desire of completing homework given to them by their version of a dogmatic institution, lest they should fall asleep because they haven't had a meal in 8 hours while their mum was away earning to be able to cook one. This is the first, most grounded connect I could pick between education and the economy. There are many takers of the commodity called education, each with varying paying capabilities, but is anyone really getting what they're paying for? Is everyone paying in the same currency? Is everyone even paying for the same outcome? Starting with the fundamentals, what does education give us anyway? There are two perspectives on this. Education is either development itself or a means to economic development. In the former, education leads a society towards scientific thought, away from superstition and primitive ideologies. Sociopolitical benefits like equality between genders also exist, among other things. For example, statistically, an increase in literacy rate of women is associated with an equal fall in child mortality rate. Long term social benefits of investment in education are very large, and therefore, an increase in education level can be perceived as well development itself. But do primary stakeholders really care for this? Well, if I go back to my experience and think about it, at school, my peers and I were working on our education so that we could go to college. The cost was monetary, and very few of us thought of jobs we would eventually get. Job prospects are now the hot topic in college for everyone alike. Though students differ in goals and ambitions, it would be safe to say that almost everyone is looking for a job in the near future. If I was to make the same analysis for the kids in the NGO run school, their concerns revolve around the household income from a very young age. The payment made in education is not necessarily monetary, rather, it is the time spent that could have otherwise been utilized earning while working. Young children help out in the small family business like food shacks or a chai ki tapri, or find their own way to earn after the age of 14. The utility derived in these households from even the slightest increase in wages is very high, and unfortunately, on an individual level, giving those hours to schooling does not cover that opportunity cost. But isn't that a paradox? Allegedly, the society at large benefits from an investment in education. However, the benefit of making education accessible alone, in isolation of creating provisions to earn or giving monetary compensations to individual households, is not that great enough to incentivize education to individual stakeholders. While economic theory speaks of development of human capital through education as a means to developing industries and contributing to the economy, it also speaks of education being synonymous to development itself. The latter, when keeping in mind the reality, comes off as a little inadequate. So, if I were to paint a picture, imagine a student from a relatively underprivileged background going to high school at the age of 15. He could be spending this time contributing to the family income. His working would allow all members of the family to eat 2 meals a day instead of one. He doesn't, however, act on that fact. He risks poor health in order to be educated. He understands now, through education, the plight of his family and reasons behind it. He becomes more aware as a citizen and endorses scientific thought. However, his progress comes at the expense of sleeping hungry consistently. Employment is impossible due to the time constraints and the eventual hope that spending a lot of hours now would give him higher income later. While both learning and earning is a need, through this example, it does seem like there exists a trade off between the two. Such dilemmas were unimaginable for students that I studied with. So it may be stated that the need to earn is high among school students from poor households as opposed to those from relatively richer households. This, however, does not mean that the need to earn doesn't dawn upon those who are financially better off. In the penultimate year of college, that it is that everyone starts to seek a job in some capacity. For some, it is not as much as a need as it is a desire to be able to sustain themselves independently. For a segment, it is a step in the slow journey towards being held responsible for a small family unit. There are several reasons, but it is safe to assume everybody at some point would like to earn for themselves, regardless of whether or not they're able to act on it or do end up acting on it. The need being addressed and the time everyone addresses it is different, but it seems like the end goal is the same: to achieve some level of economic sustenance. To attain the same, under the current scheme of things, time put into education is affordable by some, but unaffordable by others, and that is the gap we should seek to bridge. If I had to explain it in my own words, I would say that for a majority of us, there comes a time when wanting to be further educated and being able to do so becomes a luxury. Yes, the two are supposedly intertwined, but in the practical scheme of things, that does not seem to be the case. So, where is the gap? How is my degree coming between me and my job? And why is it doing so when on paper this is exactly what should be making me eligible to earn? To set a premise, the general notion is that a higher educational qualification makes you eligible for higher paying and more reputed jobs in the formal sector. In theory, this happens in two ways. Firstly, studying for higher qualifications adds to one's productivity, and secondly, completing a degree signals the ability of a worker. If we were to consider the former, looking at India and the dogmatic structure within which it delivers education, it would be safe to say that the system's reliance on testing is not the best measure of one's capability. Any blog or a scroll on LinkedIn will reveal that employers look for communication, positive attitudes, teamwork, goal orientation, flexibility, integrity, accountability, among other things. But within the present scheme of things, none of this is explicitly taught to us in institutions. The new education policy makes an attempt to skirt around the topic while talking about vocational education and internships. Though a first for the system we operate in, it still seems insufficient. A sense of individuality that helps shape the aforementioned qualities are nowhere in sight. Rather, individuality is discouraged, and it almost seems like students are supposed to find their own path when it comes to the job market, relying on family members or coaching institutions. Development of human capital, therefore, is limited to coursework, which, unless you're enrolled in a professional course, is never sufficient. This makes employment in well paying jobs distant for all, more distant for some than others. On the second viewpoint of a degree having the ability to signal a worker's eligibility holds true on paper as well. But this again does not ensure a job at any point in time. In India, the increase in jobs in the informal sector is far more than the increase in jobs in the formal sector. The unemployment rate increases when we look at subsets of individuals with higher levels of education. The popularity and capacity of the informal sector may be assumed to be higher in all developing countries alike, considering 93% of the world's informal sector comes from them. So, if education isn't ensuring a higher paying job and the time investment is keeping individuals from earning menial wages, even in a scenario where the government is adequately funding education, the enrollment is not ensured, and that is the crux of my viewpoint. I believe that even though the social benefits of education are immense, to fructify them, it is important to keep the economy in mind. To make people employable and the job market welcoming is an area of policy that, in my opinion, should be explored further. The fueling of one in isolation of another is an incomplete victory. And on that note, I would like to sign off. Thank you.